Good evening, Rabbi.
You're afraid to take the vaccine.
We're going to talk tonight about something very important. One of our friends in the community asked about this, which is the issue of wearing a head covering. You know? I guess everything is coming at the right time, right? Everything is timely. It's a timely occurrence. So why did they ask me about this question, you know? Because the truth is that when it comes to Judaism, a head covering is a very crucial and very important thing. You know, it signifies a lot. It has a lot of meaning. It has a lot of significance. So in order to understand that, we have to look first at the sources, right, about this. What are the sources and what do they say about that covering your head? You know, the truth is that when it comes to the women, we talked in the earlier lectures about what their obligation is regarding covering their hair, you know? So what we mentioned was that a woman who's married has to cover her hair when she goes outside, especially. When she's at home, not so much, but, you know, some even do that as a custom, as a stringency. That's one thing, right? And then we also mentioned that the women who are not married, who are single, you know, never married, so women like that, even though it says in Shulchan Aruch, the custom was for them to cover their hair as well. But the truth is that, you know, the custom then changed after that, after Shulchan Aruch. And now the custom is that the girls who are never married don't cover their hair. You know? Probably the reason is because we want them to look nice to get married, you know? They should look attractive. Somebody should come and marry her, you know? Because if she's going to be covering her hair, you know, looking like some kind of a, you know, monastery nun, you know, they'll have to do, right? You know, no, who wants to marry a woman like that, right? You know, doesn't look very attractive like that.
You think so?
Yeah, that's probably one of the reasons why they did that. You know, they kind of abolished that because they should be able to get married. The truth is, you know, there's a reliance on the Gemara. There's a Gemara like that. It says in the Gemara that when a person has a daughter, you know, who's marriage age, he should, like, you know, dress her up in a nice way. She should look nice, you know, good, clean, attractive, and this way somebody will come and take her and marry her. That's the idea, you know. So it is kind of a agenda. It's on the agenda, you know, this kind of a thing. It's very, very true. But, you know, besides that, we also talked about the issue that a woman who's divorced or widowed, you know, the rabbis decreed they have to also cover their hair. Why is that? Because they were one time married, you know, so you can get mixed up one with the other. So therefore they decreed that a woman who's divorced and widowed has to cover her hair as well, just like she was now married at the time. The truth is there are some leniencies regarding that. We talked about that too. Right? We covered pretty much this topic. We also covered the topic of Peh Nochrit, right? If women are allowed to wear wigs, you know, to cover their hair with a wig. You know, because a lot of Ashkenazim have this custom, you know, especially outside of Israel, and we discussed that, and we discussed that it's not allowed to wear a wig, especially outside. Inside, they can do whatever they want, indoors. But outside, for sure, they cannot wear a wig, outdoors in the public domain. We talked about that, we covered that. But today, I want to talk really about the men, you know? Well, that pretty much the women has been covered already, right? It's been talked about, right, a lot, not only by me, but by other rabbis as well. They've talked about it, right? As they say, they beat it to death already.
Not only that, it's not worth spending our time on them for too long.
They're listening. Okay, so as we said, the question now is about men, right? So the truth is that we have to understand. You see, right, that in Jewish culture, you know, like if you're really a religious Jew, Orthodox Jew, whatever, right, you're covering your hair with a kippah, with a yarmulke, you know, right? They call it yarmulke. We Jews, we call it kippah, right? There's a name, different names. There's different groups of people, right? Some people call it this, some people call it that. Mm-hmm. But the point is, right, that Jewish people do, you know, religious people do wear some kind of head covering. Then you have the Hasidic, you know, that also wear hats as well. You know, all kinds of, you know, strimals, you know, those animal things, right? The fur, right? Those fur things that come from Russia, right? From the good old days in Russia, right? All kinds of things like this. And then you have, you know, the rabbis who wear their black hats, you know, the penguin hats, you know, like the one that I have, you know, something like that, right? All kinds of stuff like that. Everybody's got their own, you know. Then you have these Kabbalists, you know, these, you know, mystic rabbis, you know, who wear, you know, these hoods, like you're wearing, you know, like a hood, you know, and it's like, you know, with all kinds of ornaments around you, and it looks very cool, you know, very chic, you know, very attractive, and very, you know, very spiritual, very grand. You know, so okay, we have all these kinds of things, right? Everybody does it their own way. But the question is there a source in the Torah regarding this issue, right? So the truth is that there is a source, right? Where is the source? The source is in the Talmud. We have in Masechet Kiddushin, over there in Daf Lamed Amud Aleph, it says over there that Rav Huna, he wouldn't walk 4 amot, which is like 6 feet, 2 meters. He wouldn't walk 2 meters without covering his hair, with his hair open, with his head uncovered. Why is that? Because he said, the Shekhinah is above me, the Shekhinah, the divine presence is above us. So therefore, in order to acknowledge that, we have to cover our hair to be humble. This is the whole thing behind that the issue. So the question is like this, that before that, in the Gemara, before it talks about this issue of covering the hair, it talks about something else. It says, Asul alech im koma eskufa. You know what that means? You're not allowed to go with an erect posture, like in the street, with your head like sticking up in the air, Mr. Authoritative, got that posture, that erect posture going on, right? That whole thing, right? So not allowed to go like this. So it says in Gemara, what's the reason why? Because it looks like you're pushing away the Shekhinah, the divine presence. You think you don't need a nobody, like you're in charge of everything. Mr. He's in charge of the whole world. He's got the whole world under his hands. So what does that mean? You're like kind of like taking God's place. As if like I don't need God. I'm the ruler. You know what I mean? I'm the boss. So therefore, it says in the Gemara, you're not allowed to go with a erect posture like that. So then after that, it talks about the issue of covering the hair. The Rav Huna used to cover his hair, But the thing is like this now. Listen to this. Right? That when it talks about the erect posture, it says you're not allowed to go like that. But when it talks about the hair covering, it doesn't say that you're not allowed to go. It says he used to do like this and this and that, which is not exactly the same thing, right? Because if you're saying that it's asur, you're not allowed to do that. That means it's forbidden. It's a sin to be like that. But when you're saying that this rabbi used to do it, that means it's more like a stringency, not like the halacha, It's like something extra he did from his own fortitude, from his own volition. That's already something else. So therefore, there are some poskim, like the Bach, in Siman Bet, in Orach Chaim, in Shulchan Aruch, and also the Gra. You know what they say, right? From this Gemara, you learn it's not really an obligation to cover the hair. It's more like a stringency. In other words, it's a proper thing, it's a proper, spiritually proper thing to acknowledge, that there's something above you, there's a power above you, so therefore you cover your hair. And that's why it doesn't say over there in Gemara that it's asur, it's not allowed. It just says that this rabbi used to do it. Meaning what? He was a good boy, Let's give him a round of applause, Yeah, good boy. Wow, you used to cover your hair? Okay, then you did something extra there, That's what it meant. But the truth is, that there are some other poskim who don't take it that way. What they say it's an obligation. More or less, a little bit more of an obligation than what these rabbis say. So what does that mean? According to them, you just, you shouldn't do it. It's not a stringency. Don't do that. Don't walk around the street without covering your hair. You know what I mean? So how does the Shulchan Aruch go? The Jewish code of law. It goes like it says you should not do it. So the language implies more like it's forbidden, but not really 100%, but a little bit more than the Gra and the Bach who said it was just a stringency. Let's put it this way, So therefore, right, in the Jewish world today, we pretty much go like the accepted opinion, the Shulchan Aruch, which is that we do cover our hair, with some kind of, covering, a kippah or a hat or a bandana or a scarf or whatever, right? A turban, if you're a real mystical, rabbi, turban. You put a turban on, whatever it is, right? None of those things. Skull cap, all kinds of things, right? People wear all kinds of things. So what's the point? The point is, right, that the accepted opinion is more like the Shulchan Aruch. So what does that mean? That we take it like as an obligation. This also is coupled with another issue, right? Which also comes into play here, which is that what we have is that there's also what I want to say. There's something just distracted me here. So what I wanted to say is that, as we said, some take it as a stringency, some take it as halakha, you know what I mean? All these kinds of things. And all right, so I'll tell you a story from the Gemara. I don't remember what I was going to say, just I lost my train of thought. But there's a story in the Gemara also which corroborates the importance of covering your hair. So it says in the Gemara something interesting. There's a Talmud that says that there was a certain woman, and she went to a certain, fortune teller or something, So this guy tells him, look, he says, you're going to have a son. She was pregnant, whatever, So he tells him, you're going to have a son who's going to be a sinner, like a wicked person, So, she, he tells her, like, okay, this is what's going to be, Your son is going to be a loser. So she gets all, riled up, and she's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Who wants to have a son like that, right? Nobody wants to have a son who's, degenerate, somebody like that, right? Deviant, right? Whatever you want to call it, right? So what happens is that she went to the rabbis, and she asked them, she said, what can I do to alleviate this problem? Is there something I can do to rectify it? That he shouldn't turn out to be a bum, my kid, So what happens is that, so one rabbi tells her like this, when he's going to be born, make sure, like from his childhood, like all the way, from beginning until, he grows up, always make sure that he has a covering on his head. And this will give him fear of God. So, it says, if you do that, that may save him from turning out to be a bum. He's always going to be God-fearing. So she actually did it, she took it upon herself that this kid should always have a hair covering wherever he goes. Whether it's in the house, in the street, and outside, inside, indoors, outdoors. So what happened was that this worked actually, They say it saved this kid from becoming a bum. So you see from there, right, that what the head covering does is that it makes you, can have an effect on your personality, on your, on your consciousness, on your, on your character. So this is an amazing thing. So covering your hair is not just something imaginary, it's not something like that. It's much stronger than that. It's actually something which effectuates, your inside as well.
Is that why the Pope has one?
Well, the truth is that in the spiritual world, covering your hair is considered to be a part of the accepted garb. Whether you go here or you're there, east, west, north, south, right? It's all pretty much the same thing. But we as Jews, right? What's the difference? The difference is that we as Jews, each one of us is like a priest, a kohen, you know what I mean. So therefore, we all have to do it. That's the thing, right? We're different. We answer to a higher authority, right? As they say, right? We're on a different level, the Jewish people. So therefore, each one of us is special, priestly. So therefore we all have to do it. That's the thing. So this is the reason why by the Jewish people, it's not just only the the leader does it, or the priest. Everybody has to do it because we're all like that. So what I wanted to get back to, right, regarding when I lost my train of thought, I think I got back to the train of thought, right? So what I wanted to say is that. Regarding covering the hair, right, there's also a different angle there of why we do it, right? We already talked about the issue of fear of God, acknowledging that something is above you, the Shekhinah, the divine presence. We talked about that. But the Taz, who was about 400 years ago, he brings a different reason why we have to cover our hair. He brings in the Shulchan Aruch over there, in Siman Bet, Orach Chaim. He says the reason is because we have to identify ourselves as Jews, So what does that mean? If you dress, since people today, more or less, they dress modern, like everybody dresses modern mostly. We're not wearing cloaks, and all kinds of these antiquated, kind of clothing, right? We're wearing modern clothing, right? So because of that, pretty much we all look the same. So you go out to the street, you go to the subway, you don't look any different than the Goy does. We all look the same. So then, how do we know that you're a Jew? You have to identify yourself as a Jew. Not to go in the ways of the Goyim. What does that mean? To look exactly like them. You shouldn't be looking exactly like they do. So says the Taz, this is the reason why we have to cover our head today as well. Because otherwise we can't identify as Jews. We have nothing else to identify us. So the kippah is the only thing. Otherwise, person sees you, doesn't know, what are you, You're Jewish, you're Irish, you're whatever you may be, right? Italian, or whatever, God knows what,
some
right?
of us are identifiable.
Right, of course, but as a general rule, Jews look like all the nations. You know what I mean? So you can't really identify a Jew just by his facial features. For sure. Maybe you can have maybe a suspicion. But you can't really identify 100%. Like sometimes you think, oh, that guy's 100% Jewish. Then he tells you, oh no, sorry, sir, I'm Italian. Well, you look. I swear, you look Jewish. Yeah, but I'm not Jewish. It's like, he's not Jewish. He's Italian. But he looks like a Jew. It happens all the time. Things like this. Or sometimes you see somebody, who looks like a wasp. Like total waspy. White Anglo-Saxon Protestant, right? But then all of a sudden, you ask him, turns out he's Jewish. He looks like a wasp. How is that? That's the way it is. Jews look like everybody. You want to hear something funny, by the way? This is something we have in common. So, we're talking about the high school over here, right? We both graduated from there. You graduated 1 year before me. So, you remember the principal and vice principal?
Verone.
Verone, and the vice principal?
The vice principal was...
Sirota.
Sirota, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm friends with Sirota's son.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
So now, right, what did I think when I was in that school, What did I think? That Verone was a wasp, and Sirota was Italian.
Yeah.
But it turns out that they both were Jewish.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? They're both Jewish.
You're kidding.
Yeah. Verone was not the principal.
No.
Groveman.
Groveman, yeah.
Jewish.
Yeah.
But they both did not, they didn't identify as Jews at all.
Back then, I was talking about this subject with a friend of mine.
Yeah.
Do you remember when we were kids? I don't want to take too much time, but we didn't take our religion or anything, our heritage seriously. When we went out to the mall looking for girls, we walked up to anybody. You remember? In the underground. We weren't looking for a Jewish girl. Because we came from secular homes, right? You realize that. So it's not surprising for me that you thought Sirota was this.
No, it has nothing to do with looking for girls or this or that. We're talking here about these two guys. They looked like they were not Jewish, but they were.
Right.
You know what I mean? They both were Jews.
Yeah, Groveman definitely looked like from...
Wasp.
From Mississippi.
Looked waspy.
Yeah. He looked like a Klansman.
Sirota looked like an Italian guy.
Yeah, Sirota.
So now, look,
Sirota's son till this day looks Italian.
Both Jewish.
Yeah.
Unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
So this is the problem today, The problem today is that we have an issue where, people walk around the street. You don't even know that they're Jewish. You can't tell. How would you know if they're Jewish? You have no way of knowing. Sometimes it's so,
Especially from the Mediterranean.
I'll tell you something really funny, I'll tell you something really, really funny. Just, yesterday, like I always knew, that the singer, like Billy Joel, that he's Jewish, his parents are Jewish.
There was a misconception. Many people thought that his father was Jewish, but it turns out both of them.
Both of them were Jewish. Yeah. So he's a Jewish boy.
Yeah.
Now, why do I tell you this? Because he was married to a Goya. We're talking about, right? That lady, the model.
Yeah.
Right? And then he divorced her. That was like 30 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever. 25 years ago. Divorced her, So now, he's been married like 4 times. But the last wife that he married, he's still married to her now.
Yeah.
She's like 35 years younger than him. And I was trying to find out, the genealogy of this lady, ancestry, what she is, because I was did he marry a Jewish girl, maybe? So I could. So the truth is, this lady that he married, she hides her ancestry. She doesn't reveal it, but I can tell you 100%, almost, that she's Jewish. This lady. So why do I tell you that? Because today, you know what it is, that a lot of people hide their Jewishness. That's the thing,
Yeah, but that's been going on for
right.
For
So you know what it is, and also these people, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
There are some people, who are famous in the Jewish world.
Yeah.
like musicians, singers, like Geddy Lee, Billy Joel,
Right,
people like
right.
this. And they always say, these people in public, that they're atheists. It's always, that may not be true, by the way, that they're atheists. You know why they say that? Because they don't want to identify as Jews. And they hide it, They try to do everything, very, hidden, not revealed. They're not proud of their heritage. But inside, they do have something there, There's something there. So, I'm not going to get too deep into this whole issue,
Yeah,
It's not my discussion, but
I don't
the reason
know.
why I'm mentioning is because we have a problem with people who don't want to identify as Jews. So this causes a problem.
Can you blame them?
Yeah, of course we're going to blame them, but whatever. We'll try to blame them if we can.
You saw
But-
what just recently happened. A
What happened?
woman spit on a kid, and it was in the news yesterday. A very attractive woman walking in the street, spit on a kid, and told him that Hitler did the right thing.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure involved there as well. But the point is, something powerful that a lot of people don't want to identify as themselves as Jews, and because of that, what happens is it causes intermarriage. That causes them to intermarry into
Yeah, but like I
other
said,
nations.
this has been happening forever,
Right, but
especially in Hollywood.
yeah, you're right.
and,
So this is exactly the reason why this rabbi comes, right, the Taz, Turei Zahav, and says, that Jews have to identify themselves as Jews, and this is the reason why you got to wear a kippah.
Yeah. Not only but people who came to this country,
Yeah,
Jews, in the early century, they converted right away. A lot of them converted to Christianity.
yeah, that's a different story. I'm not going to talk about that right now, right? That's not a discussion. But anyway, the point is, right, that the Taz says that this is the reason why a person has to wear a kippah,
Right.
to cover his head, in order to identify as a Jew. So that's also a different angle. Now, this angle, by the way, is very very important and very strong. And the reason why I tell you this is because there are, they're like the Syrian community, for instance, right? The Syrians have an interesting custom from their old country, from Syria, going back all the way. And these were religious people, by the way, devout religious people, Orthodox, with big rabbis and everything, But nevertheless, what happened was that in their community they had this custom like this. The custom was that they used to cover their hair, like outside, but when they were working for some reason, they didn't cover their hair at the job. This was their custom, So there is certain logic to that, So what's the logic? Like, you're too busy now with your job. This is not the time now to be worried about your religion. You know what I mean? Like, you got a job to do. Like labor. You're a laborer.
Good, because while you're talking about this, I was imagining myself standing with a kippah at Bergdorf. Like how I would fit in.
So now, listen to this interesting thing, right? There comes, so these Syrians have this custom for a long time, going all the way back, for hundreds of years. So the truth is, when they left Syria, and they went to America, they have their Flatbush, and Deal, New Jersey, and some of them are in Israel, whatever it is, right? So they came to the Chachamim, this generation. They asked them, they said, can we do that today as well?
Yeah.
We already left Syria, now we're here in America, whatever it is. So the question was, can we now, as the custom of our forefathers, not cover our hair when we work? So, the rabbis answered them exactly what I'm just telling you, which is they said, no, you can't do that anymore. Why? Because now the reason why we cover our hair is not only for the sake of, humility and all that, right? The Shekhinah and the divine presence, but we also cover our hair because of the purpose of identifying ourselves as Jews, not intermarrying, not assimilating into the Goyish culture, Because when you're a kippah, you can't sit with the goyim, anymore. You don't belong with them. You know what I mean? Sorry, you can see you're different. You're somebody. You don't belong. So you hang out with your own people. You don't hang around with those people, those goyim in the park over there. you don't hang around with people like that anymore, right? When you're separate, you're separate. That's the way it is, right? So that's the whole thing. This is the reason why, a lot of the Chachamim, they said, right, that in our generation we have to wear the kippah because of identification. And also, the Taz mentions as well the issue of lo telchu betchukotechem. Betchukotechem lo telechu. What does that mean? Don't go on the customs of the goyim. So what does that mean? If you dress exactly like a goy in every way, you can't see that you're a Jew. So that's like you're acting like a goy, which is not good. You're dressing like a goy. Also another thing, which also is mentioned in the Taz, the two ways I have. So right, coupled with these two issues, this is the reason why, today it's an obligation to cover your hair. There's also other, opinions and other nuances regarding this issue, right? There's also the nuance of, the more holier side of things. I'll tell you exactly what I mean. What I mean to say is that there are some holy, pious Jews, like for instance, rabbis, and their disciples, the students. What they do is they wear two head coverings, They wear a kippah, and they wear also a hat on top.
That's very common.
Yeah. So, what's the reason why they wear two? What do you need two for? One should be enough, no? So let me take off the kippah and put just a hat. Yeah. Right? But no, kippah and also hat. What's the reason for that? Because, there is such a thing like this concept in Kabbalah, that when you wear two head coverings, that gives you a lot of holiness, Two is better than one, as I say, right? So therefore, wearing two in certain situations. So what situations, by the way, do we wear two? Usually it's on time of prayer, when we're praying. So we put the hat on, and we pray with the hat. Or in the morning, shachrit, we put the talit over our head. And we pray the talit over the head. So we have the kippah and also the talit. So this is an extra measure of holiness, So the truth is, to be honest with you, like I personally, I don't mean to brag or anything like that, but like I couldn't even see myself, praying in the synagogue, the Amidah, the standing prayer, the silent prayer, without two head coverings. Like I haven't done that in the longest time, right? Because, for me it would be like infraction, like some kind of disgrace, some kind of it wouldn't feel proper to do that. Even one is not enough. You know what I mean? So there is a thing like this. Also, by the way, as well, when they're doing Birkat Hamazon, as well, big grace after meals. After they had a meal, so they're praying the prayer of Birkat Hamazon. So they're also, many people have also custom to put a hat on at that time. So they have two coverings instead of one. So they're also, they put two, and as well as we said in the Amidah, in the silent prayer. The truth is, Maran, my Rabbi Maran Ovadia, he didn't have a custom to put two coverings during Birkat Hamazon, grace after meals. This doesn't seem to be a Sephardi custom. This thing seems to be more like an Ashkenazi custom. But either way, right, that there is such a thing like that to put two coverings, in certain cases, in certain circumstances, to have extra holiness. Another thing, right, which is that in the Kabbalah it's also brought down even three coverings is even better. Can you imagine? So there are, by the way, some people who are Kabbalists, like very Kabbalistically oriented people. Right? So what they do is they wear three coverings, By the way, I know some women who do this also. They put like a skull cap, kippah. They put a skull cap on top of it, or some kind of, and then they put another covering on top. So they go around even their house with three coverings. There are some very devout women who do that.
I haven't met one of them.
Usually they come from Kabbalistic backgrounds.
Women with coverings, that devout women.
I see what you mean. Okay. I see what you mean. So that's the thing, So there's also the issue of putting three. Okay, this is now, going into a very high level. It's a very, holy thing.
Yeah. Even for you.
So now listen to this. Right, listen to this. There's also Talmud, something very powerful it says in Talmud regarding hair covering. So we went to now the upper extreme, right? Three coverings, 2, 3, upper extreme. Yeah. So then we get also somebody who doesn't go with this hair covering, at all. He just goes always, without head covering. What does it say? What does it say about a person like this in the Talmud? You know what it says? A person who goes without covering his hair in the street like that, outside, whatever, he's called azpanim, what that means? Arrogant, like like brazen, something like that. So what does that mean? He doesn't acknowledge like what's going on above. He's free, does whatever he feels like. Not a good thing to be like that, right? So it says in the Gemara, if you see a person like that, by the way, it's talking about their generation. In our generation, things have changed, obviously, Things have degraded, to a very low level. But in those days, it was unheard of. So that a Jew, or even a respectable person would go outside in the street with a bare head. By the way, you can see this also in America. Look at the older films, right?
Everybody's wearing a hat.
Everybody was wearing a hat. So you see, right, that America used to be a different kind of culture altogether. America has degraded quite a great deal. Today, it's like you wear a hat, considered to be like some kind of a cowboy or something, whatever. You're not normal, right? It's not normal. But in those days, everybody wore a hat. In the 40s and the 30s, look at the films, look at the videos. Everybody's got their hair covered. It's unbelievable, So now we're talking about 100 years ago, right? Or whatever, or 50. Now go think about what it was, in the times of the Talmud, which was, more than 1,000 years ago. You know what I mean? People just didn't walk like that. Just wasn't accepted. So why do I tell you that, right? So it says in the Gemara that a person who walks like that in the street without covering their hair, it's either one or two things, right? Either he's a mamzer or he's a ben nida. What does mamzer mean? Illegitimate child, right? Illegitimate. Or is a ben nida? What does ben nida mean? That his mother didn't go to the mikveh, that she bore all her children without going to the mikveh. So the children are not pure. They're defiled from the impurity of nida. So it's one or the other. Can you imagine? So what does that mean? That a person who goes without a head covering, in Talmud, is very much looked down upon. It's considered to be a person who walks like that in the street. It's considered to be like like a bum. Like some kind of a street punk. That's basically how we would call it today, right? But today it's the accepted norm. That's the thing, right? Things have changed. But nevertheless, the Judaism does look down upon, a person who walks around like that. Because that means that he's a free man, he does whatever he wants. He doesn't think about, am I allowed to do this? Would he allow that? That's not on his mind. When he takes off the kippah, that's what it means. It's a sign that he's not making that cheshbon, that calculation anymore. He's not making that calculation. He's not holding there anymore, right? So what does that mean? He'll do whatever he can get away with, as long as the police are not watching, or there's no cameras. But the problem is upstairs, the video camera is rolling all the time. You know what I mean? So you can't stop the video camera upstairs. There's no way to stop it, right? That's the thing, right? So a person has to know that. If you don't, let's put it this way, right? So what's the bottom line? The bottom line is that if a person is not covering his hair, right? Not covering his head, he doesn't realize that there's a video camera up there. And that's the reason why he's really not doing it. Everything is being watched, everything is being monitored, everything is being judged. He's not cognizant of that. And that's why he doesn't cover his hair. That's what the Talmud is trying to tell you. So what does that mean? The Gemara says, right? Either he's a ben nida or he's a mamzer. What does that mean? He's a deficient person, a person who's blemished. That's the way the Torah looks, the Talmud looks at somebody who doesn't cover his hair. Yeah? So it's considered to be something very, very, very serious, that issue. So therefore, right, as we already said, right, regarding the kid also, who was saved by covering his hair, that he's going to become a bum, and they saved him. So you see from there, the truth is that covering your hair is considered to be a very, very serious topic, something which should not be overlooked or, let's skip over it. Don't skip that over, because it's considered to be a very, very valuable thing. So bottom line, it means that a person who's covering his hair, right, has fear of God more, right? He's aware of God. He's aware of the laws of God. It makes him more aware. It's an outside, symbol that effectuates also his inside as well. Like the Ramchal says, Mesilat Yesharim, one of the famous books about the ethics, Musar, Mesilat Yesharim. Says the Ramchal of the Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto that what happens is like this, that when a person starts to do something on the outside, to some kind of a symbol on his body, to accentuate something, to symbolize something, either covering your hair or wearing a certain kind of clothing, being more modest, revealing less of your flesh, your body, whatever, right? Covering more of yourself, all kinds of things like this, So this is like outside. So you know what they say, right? There are some foolish people, by the way, younger, like Jews, who are foolish. So what they tell you is like this, that's outside stuff, what do I need it for? It's all in my heart. Everything is in my heart. My God is in my heart. My Judaism is my heart. So what does that mean? My heart, I have it, but I don't need to wear that stuff, I don't need to wear that religious garb, So the truth is that this is a very big mistake. It's a foolish person who says these kinds of things. And I'll tell you why. Because if you don't effectuate the outside, it says Ramchal, Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, that what happens is that once you start doing symbols on the outside, that also permeates to the inside as well. So what happens is that all affects you, and eventually you start to change. You start to become better, So what does that mean? That when you are more modest, the way you dress on the outside, eventually that will permeate also to the inside as well. So it's going to increase your fear of God, your modesty, your humility, the good traits, good character traits. That's what it's all about, So, bottom line, what's the halacha? The halacha is that the truth is, I think any responsible rabbi will tell you, in this generation, every Jew should be wearing some kind of a head covering on his head. Either a kippah or a skull cap or a hat or whatever, some kind of whatever it is. I don't want to say a baseball cap. I don't want to say that, But the truth is, it's better than nothing, right? Depending on the situation. Or whatever. Right? One of those hats, one of those funky hats, whatever, right? Everybody's got their own style, but the point is that every God-fearing person, every God-fearing Jew should cover his hair. That's the way it is, And with that also, you're identifying yourself as a Jew. And you should know, by the way, that if eventually what happens is that if you do identify yourself as a Jew, everybody will respect you more. The Jews and also the non-Jews. Yeah, that happens sometimes, Sometimes you get abused by some people. It can happen. What I'm saying is in general, as a general rule, they see it as a wise thing, that you cover your hair, you walk in humility and modesty. People respect that very much. Believe me when I tell you. It's not something which gets overlooked. It definitely, eventually, right, will have a positive effect on you and your surroundings and the whole world, the whole Jewish people, the whole world as well. So Hashem should help us to become more humble and more modest, and this will develop good character traits inside of us as well. Amen. Amen. Thanks for coming.
Amen.
Chazak le'ematz. Be blessed with wealth, health, and happiness, and security as well. Later tov. All the best.
Amen.